Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of our new podcast, Voices of the Resistance. I am Will Selber. Some people have called me GCV, Grumpy Combat Veteran. I've also been called Colonel Selber, and probably a whole bunch of names that I can't repeat on air. So I am pleased to start this new podcast with my new co-host, Nasrullah John Safi, the combat interpreter. And we thought there would be no better way than to get this party started to bring in somebody who's appeared on our show multiple times, a good friend of GCV and one of really my Afghan teachers, Jason Howke, the director of the Global Friends of Afghanistan. Hey, brother, how's everything going, man?
Not too bad. How y'all doing?
We're doing all right, man. We're doing all right. We're happy to have you here.
Yeah, this is awesome. Can't wait.
Well, it's an absolute honor to have you on the podcast. I was excited when I heard about you. Like, Jason is going to be on the podcast. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to join this podcast with him.
Yeah, we got a bunch of Afghan history knowledge here, boy. I'm intimidated. So, Jason, this week one of your organizations is hosting an event, and I think it's a really important event. And I wanted to bring you on so you kind of explain to our listeners what's going on this week in Nashville, I believe, right?
Yeah, Nashville, Tennessee at Operation Stand Down, and then at John Bon Jovi's bar down on Broadway. So we're gathering people from across America who are interested in strengthening veteran service member mental health. So our band, Over Never Out, we kind of started this with a song called Hold On, Reach Out, which was something to help prevent suicide, get people talking.
Yeah.
Turned into these, concerts where we can make people aware of what's going on, the crisis in the community, and how the numbers are still going the wrong way. But this year we were able to put a whole conference together with the help of a massive network of people who care about this. So we're going to bring in all the folks that are on the front line, helping suicide prevention, homelessness, drug addiction, you name it, anything that's afflicting our veterans. We're bringing people together and going to cross that with industry and government and see if we can improve the systems and help more of our veterans. So we're really excited. It's been a great team helping me with this.
Yeah.
And I'm pumped up, and I appreciate your podcast helping to sponsor this conference. It's going to be amazing.
Well, I was in advertising. I was going to try to do the Principles First conference this year. And for various reasons, I was like, I think going to Nashville would probably be better. Honored to sponsor something like this. I mean, suicide prevention for veterans is something that is near and dear to my heart. I have lost too many of my friends, my brothers and sisters, to suicide. One of them, Captain Casey McCausland, who hit an IED that killed our driver. After that IED, Jason, he was never the same, and I always say that it wasn't really suicide. The Taliban finally killed him in the end. He died. It just took him a while to die from his wounds. This is, John, this is a big, problem. I'm sure you're aware of it because you're so clued in on the American veteran community. That the amount of suicides is just staggering when you take a look at the numbers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I recently lost one of my brothers, Specialist Casey, when he transitioned from the military. He ended up working at ER, emergency department for a while. And then one day he traveled from all the way to Oregon to meet me. And I was happy to see him for the very last time. And then I heard about him that he killed him, which was heartbreaking to everyone within the unit and the people who knew him. So thank you, Jason, for this incredible work you do. And, quite honestly, it's pretty bad for veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know, from my work with Global Friends of Afghanistan, we've been watching the suicide rates, especially for women in Afghanistan, continue to climb in a country where that's very not normal. That has never been a tradition. Yeah, it's important. So we're going to have a conference about it in the morning, and then we're all going to meet at John Bon Jovi's in the evening and have a concert with 4 bands to bring everybody together and keep talking about the issue and, kind of get a mix going on. We've got some Red Star families, some of those partners and spouses who survived the loss of a loved one to suicide. Yeah, we're just trying to bring everybody we can together and see if we can get more solutions to make this kind of a regional or an annual event where we pull in everybody and keep growing the network. We need a bigger network that's ensures that as soon as somebody needs help, they get help immediately. Not a phone call, but actually a program with a therapist or with a horse. We don't care. If it helps them and it keeps people alive, they need to be able to access it immediately. They can't wait in line when this is the problem.
Amen. I will be very frank for those that, read my work at the Bulwark or on GCV. I tend to be very blunt and honest about, what the wars have done to me. For all of us who were combat veterans in Afghanistan or Iraq or in the global war on terrorism, you can be a trigger puller, or you can be the person in the rear with the gear watching a Predator drone take out, dozens of people. And those types of things are going to have an effect on you. And, as a former commander at various levels, I can't overemphasize how hard it is for a unit when an active duty service member commits suicide. I've had that happen before. And then, I think it was just a few weeks ago, Jason, that I read it, and it was just, another one in the military.com. And it was a veteran who killed himself at the VA parking lot. I mean, it's so staggering in that it doesn't seem to pierce. It hasn't. Maybe it will now, but it hasn't in the past really pierced into something that can be community based. It's always just here's some more money, right? And I think after 20 years, this is just my thoughts, that the only way to really help veterans, the suicide rate, is to help them, I don't like to say this, transition into civilian life better. I think we should stop saying it's a transition, and we should expect the American people to meet GWOT veterans halfway.
Yeah.
I think that, that's a concept I've been talking a little bit about. I don't know, Jason, I just found the entire transition process to be lacking.
Yeah, it's a painful event. One of our partners that's coming out there is called Onward Ops. Oddly enough, I served with one of the founders in Afghanistan in 2002 and 3. But their program is exactly that, getting each community prepared to line up all the resources so that when people are leaving the military, you know where they're going, and you connect them before they even head back to their new home or their new place or their old hometown to the network that's going to support them in this onward operation. Because it's your last mission in the military is to go to this location, set up camp, put out your security, figure out your food plan and your medevac plan. I mean, it's the last mission that you're going to have for the Army. And so their idea was you get the community more than halfway, leaning in towards you. So when you get there, everybody you need to talk to is waiting for you, and they know what you need, and they are watching you. They're pulling you in, they're putting their arms around you. So I'm so pleased to see so many programs that are figuring out where the gaps are, because it's not all with the same thing. Everybody has a different reason for what drives them to this. So we have to have multiple programs. And I agree. I'm not a fan of throwing money at it, but every program should be funded if it's good and it helps save lives. We should be kind of identifying those best practices and putting the money there versus dumping it in a veterans organization that's been around for 50 years but hasn't saved a life. Well, it's a cool name, and I'm sure you're lobbying well, but we need something that works for this generation and, the older generations that are struggling. The Vietnam veteran generation is one of the highest with suicide rates. So what are we missing there? What's the gap? How do we fill it? And we should be surging those resources. But it's a shared problem, but we don't have anybody who, the VA and DOD don't work together on this. So the VSOs don't work together on this. Hard to get them in the same room. It thinks I don't want to lose my piece of the pie instead of saying, collaborate.
John, I don't know how familiar you are with the transition process for American veterans into civilian life, but it tends to be it is a significant emotional event because you're basically, no matter how great you are or how horrible you are, you get that the discharge paperwork and they're like, see you later. and you're kind of out into the streets of America, and you're like, who are these people and why are they so weird?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I did read a little bit about Jason. He's been doing it for a while. He's
Yes, of course he has.
been helping uh people with for military transition. But yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking, to be honest with you. It's pretty chaotic. Where I live, I see a lot of homelessness, and I ended up talking to a few of them, and they were Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vietnam veterans, when I went to Scott Mann, Rooftop Leaders, Hero's Journey, I met a Vietnam veteran, and like he was a tunnel rat. And we had him on the show, shoulder to shoulder. He was a Point Man Ministries. And, I went out to hang out with him and his family one day. And like, I felt like I was talking to myself in about 20 years. I was like, I don't know if I hope to get where you are, but like, I find that you have found some type of peace encouraging because, man, like GWAT vets, Afghans who served in the GWAT, I consider them, GWAT vets myself, the interpreters, our Afghan allies, part of that. The way that the war ended or keeps going, nobody's gone through this before. If in America, this is the longest war with 1% or whatever the calculation is that served. Like, it's a heavy, heavy burden for people who, like Jason, like me, like John, and others who stayed there for a long time, and like really got into the mission and tried to do the right thing. And, I think that when you look at veteran suicide, it's such a difficult problem because, like you said, Jason, everybody has their own reason. But I guess, one of the things that I always tell, as a former commander to my troops is that you as a leader, an NCO especially, and then, frontline officers, you have a responsibility to check on your troops. Like, that's why, even then the suicide rate is too high on active duty, right? And it's not just because they went to see a war or whatever. It could be something as, you don't understand that, like, the airman is fighting with her sister and there's family drama. And, you have to get into the weeds and figure out what's going on because these people, these Americans that volunteered, are our national treasure because they've decided to raise their right hand and do something that most Americans will never understand. And it really sickens me, Jason, when I can't even really dig into the numbers because it makes me so sad about the number of veterans that still do suicide. Yeah, you've been doing this for so long. What gives you hope that there's something that we can hang on to, man?
I think it's especially putting this conference together with my friend Rob Dufresne and Dick Bondre, both former Green Berets, worked some of our special units. These guys they care. One had just got out, one got out the same year I did, and everybody still cares about it. So I think we're starting to see now kind of a growth. People who didn't used to want to use the word suicide or talk about it, they thought they'd make it worse. And I think we're seeing that change now as we've spent more time talking about resilience and mental health being something you need to take care of, not some stigma you should have. It's still a stigma in the active forces because nobody believes it's okay to go see a therapist if you need help still. It doesn't matter how many examples they see, but I think that's what gives me hope is so many people are still willing to work on this. When we started putting this Bon Jovi event together, I think there was me, Rob Telton, Rob Dufresne, and a couple other people. We've got like 50 people working on this. And John Bon Jovi's bar is like, all aboard. Yeah, take over the whole roof. We'll give you part of the third floor. We want to support this. This is important. The Bon Jovis were Marines. That's two Marines married each other and created the kids who started a band. So they're into it. And the whole town of Nashville is into it. So that's what gives me hope is everywhere we try to do something, people come out of the woodwork because my brother killed himself. My father killed him. Suicide is rampant well, it's not rampant, but it's part of everybody's life. It's hard to find somebody who doesn't know someone who has passed away in this way. Yeah, I think the openness of it and the people still willing to work on it for free, completely volunteer event. You're here coming up, people donating some really big and amazing things to make it happen. So that's what motivates me. I know our song has saved lives. I know every partner that's coming to this, their program has saved lives. They know that feedback. And every nonprofit I've been involved with for veterans, I've gotten that feedback that you got us at the right moment. You just saved my family or my brother or my sister or my dad. So it's going to work. We just got to keep pushing and keep expanding the network. I grew up under McChrystal, the team of teams idea. We're going to keep building more and more teams and just get the collaboration up to make it clear to the communities, to all Americans. You invested in building this treasure and you sent it off to war for 20 years, like the Roman legion. We've never done this before. It's a science experiment. We have got to invest the same amount of work and resources at making sure that everybody adjusts well into their life and stays well until it's their natural time.
Go ahead, John, please.
So, I mean, you mentioned openness and awareness for those veterans, because a lot of them don't want to talk about their trauma. And what happens is when something bad happens to them, then we hear from their loved ones like, "Oh yeah, this stuff for PTSD or all sort of all sort of mental illnesses." But if you let them talk about it, a lot of them won't go to therapists, and those are the things that this is doing it that really help them. And they give them the encouragement to talk about their trauma and share with their loved ones, with their friends, with people that they are being surrounded by. Just as my question about your upcoming event, is there any chance for live streaming or recording available later on? For a lot of folks, I'm sure like there's so many people wanting to join, but because of the time and the schedule and work and everything else, we'll be able to make it.
Yeah, so we've got it won't be live streamed. The way we're running the conference, very close to how we do it at Global Friends of Afghanistan. The last one, we want people, they're going to break into working groups and come up with solutions and pitch the solutions. There will be a collection of the data, because we have another great sponsor, Collaboration AI is going to come in. They run these kind of conferences to come out with solutions and next steps, not just sit and talk. So we have a professional team coming in to run this with Nick Vondre and I just kind of setting the stage and opening it up. But so we're going to get the lessons out that we can put out to people and use to grow. Our big hope is that this could be a regional hopping event. Like becomes like a Coachella that moves around the country, hits Texas for a long weekend, hits California, comes up to New York, goes to Pennsylvania, wherever there's big veteran conglomerations. We want to be able to take this event and give veterans a couple of days to come and be part of it, learn from it, and build the community that can be involved in better mental health for our veterans and active members. So that's kind of the plan. So we will give out some information that we learn in this one, and we're going to use it to build the next ones and keep bringing in more and more groups, more partners, which are the people on the ground on the front lines, whether therapists or VSOs or nonprofits or for-profit therapists. We don't care. If you're saving lives, we want you to be a partner. So we're just going to keep growing this and moving it around and sharing the ideas and make sure that our federal government and state governments know how to help. And the local governments, can really learn to be there to accept people in and pull them in. That's the critical piece to me. It's what you said up front, Will. People, when they're leaving service, I did it twice. I did it as a sergeant. I did it again as a major when I retired. There's a lot going on in that moment of you getting out and finding your feet and going to the next stage. It messes with you pretty badly.
Oh man, it is I'm 6 months in. Things are going according to plan. Yeah, I mean, I had, the VA, in my opinion, completely and totally fail me. I was, in my opinion, unlawfully detained. And I'm grateful that the police officers, didn't try to escalate anything, but the way that the system treated me, and I was a retired colonel, I was commander, blah, blah, blah. When I was in a moment of I had been caught up in the system for just being a guy who was a combat veteran and had a flashback in public, I was sent to a state mental hospital for 7 days, and I got 2 hours of time outside that whole time. I was with people who were meth addicts, people who were homeless. That was 7 days of my life. And there was no recourse. Like, it was like, when I woke up there, I was like, okay, I'm in it. There's no way I can get out now. Because I'll tell you the truth, Jason, for veterans and, a lot of stuff like with police can be very difficult to navigate. And it is for me because, I feel safe if I have a knife or something on me. I have, people can see a knife and it's legal to carry in Texas, but still, you have police that can be aggressive. Interaction there, I tell you what, it's fraught with peril, and we've seen it go south. And this is just one of the things that are many that when you come out, you're like, I've spent my entire life in Afghanistan, Iraq, studying this culture. And now it's like, here you go. Here's, well-meaning people who don't know anything about it. And like, it's a very difficult conversation to have. I was in a very nice place in the Midwest, and I sat down and I had like my, this hat right here probably, and I sat down and the lady next to me who has been drinking looked at me and said, I think you're a phony. Like it was like a stolen valor claim. Like I was like, what? I was like, what? No. And these are the type of things that like, when we talk for like GCV and the Afghan American Veterans Alliance, the reason why we support Jason and Global Friends of Afghanistan and all of his efforts is that he's got the track record to prove that he's in it for the right reasons. And like, we're proud to support, Jason's efforts. He's been, I tell you what, I don't know many American officers who have been a more stalwart ally of the Afghan people than you, Jason. And not only are you like helping Afghans, and you've been doing that for so long, but you're also spending your time taking care of your brothers and sisters. And I'm very grateful that you're doing this.
Thank you. I feel it's that continuing mission that we all have when we get out. There's something you're passionate about. It's going to make your second career better, even if you're just doing nonprofit work. It's worth it. I know that people are getting help, or at least there is a light being shined on a problem. My journalist hat on when I write, a lot of things. And John has written with me. I was just thinking about that, John. Your first published piece. I see all your books in the background. And I love all the writer stuff that you have embraced. You wrote your first piece with the current National Security Advisor and I.
Yeah, with Michael.
Not a bad way to get published. Yeah.
Well, it's back in 2020, I believe. Yes. And I do have your book. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here. And then I will ask you about it later. But for our audience, they just wanted to add a little bit about Jason. There's so much, I can probably write a book about him. My writing is, a little better now, and I can definitely write a book about Jason's and his work. Jason is someone who knows about Afghanistan's way better than a lot of Afghans themselves. And I'm not exaggerating this part of it because Jason knows so much about Afghanistan or in the Middle East as a whole. As an Afghan American, Jason, I truly appreciate everything you've been doing for Afghans and for fellow veterans here in the United States. It's just God's work, man. It's incredible. And we do appreciate everything. And also, we really wanted to meet Jason in person and it happens in D.C. We had coffee, which was incredible. We're talking like for emails, and I never met him in person, and I really wanted to, and it did happen. And I'm looking forward to have coffee again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you're on mute.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I forget to mute. So let me put a mark clip here. So as we're recording this on the 17th of February, we're almost a month in to the Trump administration. I am somewhere between, not like freaking out alarm, but so there's some things that have happened that I fear will have second and third order effects. I understand that President Trump is the duly elected president and he has the right to do what he can until the checks and balances come in. But, Jason, one of the things that I get scared of, and me and John were talking about, is that with all the refugee services being cut, that there's going to be a lot of Afghans who are unemployed, asylum seekers, P1, P2s, and that it's basically all coming to a halt. Are you optimistic that eventually there will be a pathway that is codified that can maybe be something that is like smoother than like the horribleness that was the last 4 years.
I am not optimistic
Yeah.
for this year, at least. I
Yeah.
knew going in that the two top priorities internationally were Israel and Ukraine. I knew that was going to be the top things, and that's solely what they focused on. I haven't even noticed, or I haven't found out if they've even appointed anybody to take the reins on Afghanistan, U.S. policy towards Afghanistan. And we don't know. We've been hearing people talk about cutting wasteful funding, but we don't know if they've actually stopped the money yet that the Taliban steal or get in many different ways. I mean, it goes in there so many different ways. We do know a lot of the USAID funding for women and girls and education has been chopped with all the other stoppages. So I'm not optimistic that this year they're going to get around to this being a priority, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of Afghanistan war veterans in the administration and in Congress right now. And I know it's important to all of us. And so I hope that there's a moment that other things calm down and we're able to kind of transition quickly to, all right, let's not forget Afghanistan and Iraq, and let's make sure that terrorists are not, getting ready to launch another September 11th. So I think there's got to be this effort to look at it. I don't know when that's going to come. I do hope it's part of the administration's plan. I've talked to Mike Waltz for years on Afghanistan, and I do hope that that's on his agenda and he's able to get it to bubble up to the top. Israel and Ukraine and Russia are just eating all of the effort, and the Secretary of State's got the entire world to focus on. So when it happens and somebody gets, pegged as that person to lead the policy, I hope it hits all those issues we need, because you're right. The last 4 years have been rough. We can't repeat that. We've already really hurt our image around the world, not just with the people of Afghanistan, but with everybody who we ask to stick their necks out and help us fight for democracy and justice and freedom. And they're all sitting there going, but what happens afterwards? I have an example with Afghanistan, and it's not an example I'd like to follow. So I'm sure the people in Ukraine are thinking about that right now.
100%. I think that, I am all in favor of like holding the Trump administration accountable and like being like, this is going to do that. Hey man, that's part of the game. That's just life in politics, But I've been saying this for a while now. Where were all these voices, pro-NATO spirit, when we abandoned and stabbed in the back our Afghan allies? Because I'll be honest with you, look, who has two thumbs and wants to kill more Russians? This guy right here. I'm all in favor of it. Hell, let's kill more of them. It's the only option you have. But like, hey, you're going to make your choices. But when we talk about, like Afghanistan, I just want to know, like, why weren't Democrats, and that I voted for a Democrat, why weren't Democrats hitting Biden over the head with this publicly? Because it was humiliating. And now we see that they're not going to they don't have the moral standing. Unfortunate for them, because they're the ones. I'm so sorry. You could use the Doha Agreement as like this force field that somehow prevents you from being held accountable for your actions afterwards. And please don't come at me trying to explain the Doha Agreement. I've read the entire thing. But like, it's frustrating for me, Jason, because there are voices inside of this whole community that are like, talking about supporting Afghans. But
Yeah. I think I've seen the same thing. It was very political. The Democratic Party rallied around and just closed ranks around Biden to protect him from this stupid mistake that the military was completely opposed to. And now, for 4 years, they never did anything to force them to speed up the process, to take care of people, to get all of our allies out of third countries. And now that Trump's in there, like you said, not even a month, Trump's not taking care of our allies. We support Afghanistan. And I'm like, where were you for 4 years? Because I was looking for you as a party to come out and help, but you didn't.
You failed. And go ahead, John, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm glad you mentioned the Doha Agreement. And Jason wrote a book about this. You know,
Of course he did.
you discuss youth war options in Afghanistan, and you talked about 4 youth presidents. President Donald Trump happened to be one of them who initiated the Doha Agreement, and now he's back in the White House. And the Doha Agreement, we all know that it's setting the stage for what happened, that the chaotic withdrawal, the collapse, and the uncertain future for Afghans. So what now? I mean, where do you see the youth policy in Afghanistan? You know, just to give you an example from last couple of weeks, I don't know if you guys saw the short video clip from one of the Afghans female journalists who asked President Trump about Afghanistan, and he literally brushed it off instead of saying like, "Oh, I couldn't understand what you're saying. Your action is too heavy." Let's be real. I think that wasn't the case. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the question itself, that he did not want to address it. So where do you see the youth policy in Afghanistan nowadays? And they're just
I think it's frozen right now. There will be a little bit of spending cut, in there. It's probably not going to cut the right money because we haven't studied it. So I think it's kind of frozen right now. I really think they're waiting for Israel and Ukraine to be sorted out before they jump into another big foreign policy problem that has a lot of baggage for both political parties. I could see that kind of being what they're doing. Let's get some movement on these two, get some other wins, and then go back and fix this thing that really got screwed up by both political parties. So,
yeah,
it seems like to me that's where it is. Like it's the third or fourth thing in line. Yeah. It's not the top two, and they need the top two to be done because so much is, that those two affect the world so much. So, it's just that is the nature of the beast.
If he does what Biden did to Afghanistan, and it seems like that's what's going on, and that's what's going to happen to Ukraine, from last couple of days, what we've been watching and what we've been hearing from the administration. So if that does happen to, I hope it doesn't, but, if it does happen to Ukraine, then what kind of policy do you see from the current administrations in Afghanistan? Like, what kind of policy changes? Because it's going to do the same thing that Biden did to Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think that, when we talk about try to answer that question, and I think we're too early. We don't know. And it's just when I see who the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan is going to be, who they're going to sit out in Doha, that'll be a telltale sign for me. Who is going to be the ambassador, and what are they going to do at the CIA? Because the CIA has been given an option contract to walk out. I have a feeling like there might be some house cleaning. And you know what? If you were responsible for shaking hands with Sarah June Haqqani, thank you for your service. The door is right out that way. You could have quit. I'm so sorry. I have zero tolerance for this shit. This idea perpetrated by morons, excuse my language, like Barnett Rubin, that June Haqqani is the great moderate hope for Afghanistan. And these lies peddled by men like him, Zalmay Khalilzad, and some other people have convinced a certain section of the left's elite, foreign policy, unfortunately, that actually he's the moderate hope for Afghanistan. Are you insane? He is the this is what happens, Jason and John. You guys know this. What happens is, actually, he's actually just the leader of the Haqqani network. And he's not part of Al-Qaeda. And you just have to hit your head up against the wall and just be like, if you just read one book about this, it wouldn't take you very long. It's just madness to me that we've spent the last 4 years in bed with the Haqqani network and nobody held Biden accountable for it. I wrote a couple of articles about it in the Bulwark, but where was the investigation on that? That is despicable.
Yeah. Talk about pissing on the graves of American and NATO soldiers and, 70,000 ANDSF who fell.
Yes.
Like, these people are happy to take young boys with mental health problems or learning disabilities, create suicide bombers out of them, and have them go kill Muslims in Afghanistan. I'm sorry, no one's getting a handshake. And I started I was part of the push to get reintegration and reconciliation and a path to a peace process in the national discussion in Afghanistan and the international discussion. But we never intended to use the ideas behind it to give terrorists more power. We wanted to disempower them. And so it's all been flipped on its head. Now diplomats and, like you said, these so-called, experts are running around going, oh, we can trust these Haqqani and Taliban guys. No, we cannot. They don't negotiate. They lie about everything. They signed the Doha Agreement and upheld nothing. And nobody had, the smarts to say, we're walking away from Doha. You don't care about it, then we don't care about it.
Yeah, I mean, so John, like as the combat interpreter, you spent more time, obviously know more about Afghanistan than either of us. What do you think? Is Sirajun Haqqani the great moderate hope that we've all been waiting for to come over the Hindu Kush Mountains with a copy of the U.S. Constitution in hand? When you read that from the New York Times, I'm moved to tears.
He was known for the, father of suicide bombers, and he killed, I don't know, thousands and thousands of innocent people in Afghanistan. But it's quite crazy. It's not the only, it's not something we're doing in Afghanistan with those tourist groups, but we're doing the same thing in Syria. We're doing
with Jelani.
Yeah, isn't this crazy? It's not just happening. We're doing the same thing in all over the world with people who tried to kill us. He killed us once, and he tried to kill us more and more. And we're still doing we're trying to make them at least oh, they're good people and they're changed and a lot happens and they're not the same people. It's happening. I just don't get it. To be honest.
It's madness, and I do a podcast with Bill Raggio, and at least once a month, I just open up the New York Times and I'm like, well, here's a whole podcast so we can just spend some time on the New York Times' inability to comprehend Afghanistan. Who's ever feeding them this line of bullshit? I smell Barnett Rubin from a mile away. The guy who decided to go, I'm just going to go to China and meet with the Afghan ambassador to China. Why? Why is he there? What was he doing there? I am in 100% favor of the Republicans just going to town on this and just battering some people up, because they knew that Jelani is Al-Qaeda. It's a very nice suit. It's very nice. The beard, who's ever his public relations, it's just brilliant. He just comes out and he's like, I've changed. And the Biden administration sends somebody for a 30-minute meeting. They come out, no pictures, and they say, actually, we found him to be pragmatic. This man over here who was at Boca, what are we doing? This, Jason, this is the type of stuff that for combat veterans, it's not all of us, but for combat veterans who follow this, and a lot of people do, this type of stuff is soul shattering. I cannot underemphasize. It's just because then you start thinking, Jason, are we the bad guys? I've had people tell me that. It's I feel that we're the bad guys. And, and that is a narrative that gets born off of us shaking hands with people who murdered Americans, Afghans, NATO, all of the people that protected you. You're shaking hands with their killers. And if you don't think people are watching that, yes. The Ukrainians should be watching it. Look, we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be the greatest deal in the history of deals. I hope, whatever. But why would anybody trust us anymore, Jason?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Yeah. I don't think, oddly enough, I don't think that the Russia-Ukraine outcomes are going to be like it was in Afghanistan. I have a feeling from folks I've talked to that Ukraine is just as happy as Russia is to stop this because it is a meat grinder. I mean, the numbers of people compared to Afghanistan's losses on both sides, it's astronomical. So I think there's a movement on both Ukraine and Russia's sides to get this to an end, and I think that'll have a different outcome because they both understand it more than we ever will. I don't know. That's the feeling I get from folks I've talked
here's
to.
the thing.
I could be very wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong too. We'll get into the Ukraine. I am way more of a skeptic that whatever deal that we're going to cut, let's be honest, when we cut a deal with Putin.
Yes, sir.
When you cut a deal with Putin, he's going to, all that land that you're going to give him, that's where the raping and pillaging will take place, and the ethnic cleansing and the targeting of Jews and all sorts of the wonderful things that the Russians have been known to do. No offense. We all make mistakes, but like has a history of being quite brutal. I'm as an American Jew, it saddens me to see us leave an ally, regardless of the mistakes they made or the mistakes that we made. President Biden's rhetoric on Ukraine was very sweet. Unfortunately, it was not met by reality of any type of sense of urgency when Putin was exposed in the early rounds. I'm sorry to get off on a tangent.
I'm with you.
You know,
We
like when you
handled it
look
poorly
at,
again.
yeah, when I look at Ukraine, it's like I've only written a couple articles about it because it's not my thing. But like I tell everyone, I told like a Ukrainian guy at Sam's, where I got an infantry officer at Sam's, and he looked at me and we were doing, a war game. And I was like, he's like, what are you guys going to do with Russia? You guys are going to count on us? And he's like, no. He's like, he's like, at a certain point in time, you'll let us go. And I was like,
It's true.
it's just, look,
Our new track record.
it's our track record. That's our track record. And like, it sucks. Like, I always tell people, like, when we come bearing gifts, just take them, write down the things that we said that were interesting, incorporate that into your strategy, and then go fight the war that you need to fight to win. Because like our track record is not great. And I'll get off on myself.
Fair point.
Yeah, John, as we close things out, man, I mean, we talk a lot about veteran suicide, but, maybe you could just talk a little bit about like the suicide crisis that is going on. I mean, I don't know if it's a crisis. It seems like it would be, and it would be underreported for Afghans who are trapped, the way I say it, trapped behind enemy lines. You don't have to follow it daily to see that it happens quite often in today's gender apartheid regime that's in Afghanistan.
Well, Jason did mention, it's happening with Afghan women, which is pretty uncommon based on, religious practices or faith and some, local traditions and culture. But not what has been happening under the Taliban regime. A lot of women, a lot of young girls are, putting into their lives. Things are pretty crazy for pretty much everyone. I heard about folks that, I knew them, ended their lives and, they served in the Afghan government, previous government, and now there is no hope for them. Every single day or every single moment in their lives, it's kind of like a survival, and they don't even know if they can make it to the next minute or hour. It's happening in Afghanistan, and it is pretty bad here in the United States with the Afghan communities. Wherever you go visit Afghan families, they have been struggling a lot. And it's not just a trauma that they brought with them from back home. That's this whole process integrating into the American culture or Americans' communities. It's a very traumatic journey for them. I've been, talking to a lot of people that I know. It's just kind of part of my job too, and the things that they're going through. And now it's not getting any better because it's going to get worse after the executive order and the support that they used to get. Here, life is totally different for them, and they were not ready for this kind of life here. Now they have to pay bills. They have to pay rent or rent. They have to, like they have to take care of a
Can't
lot.
even function in American life. I mean, look, I think today I spent like at one point I don't know what bank it was, AT&T, and they were like, you have to have a 5-digit PIN. I'm like, no, 4, that's it. No, like no. I was like 5. I was like 4, 5, 4, and I was like, I'm not doing it. And like it's madness because you're just like, this is the American way. Like it's just like you have to like get fed into the meat grinder to somehow
Mhm.
make it through the other side. And, from Afghans, all of us obviously know quite a few. And, there's a common misperception that, for some Afghans that like you like step off the plane and then like somebody hands you the money bag and you're like, sweet. No, an incredible culture shock for a lot of Afghans. Imagine just coming to, I don't know, Dallas, Texas, and you've lived in Kandahar, wherever, and you're like flown into Dallas and somebody like puts you in a car and you go up into the freeway and it spins you around. I did that once with one of my interpreters and I looked over at him and he was just like, and I was like, don't worry, I got this, baby. And I was, those are the things that like, 120, however many Afghans are here, like they have to struggle through. And, for all of, our listeners, and I'll let Jason and John have the last word. I just want to say, to veterans, GWAT veterans, whether you're, served wherever and you have that campaign medal, you are part of a brotherhood supporting missions overseas. And I also include our allies in that, our Afghan, our Iraqi, and Syrian, or whatever. They're GWAT veterans too. And like suicide, because of the nature of this war, is going to be a persistent thing. But I just want to thank, John and Jason for willing to come in here and have uncomfortable conversations about it, because that's really the only way that we're able to make any headway, is that we're able to actually talk about these difficult things in a manner that's approachable so that people can understand the severity of it. So, Jason, as always, I really appreciate it. John, I think you've been doing this your entire life. I'm grateful to have you on board and to keep me somehow on track. John, you want to say anything before we close off?
Well, I have to admit that, when I got your email about this podcast, I know Jason was the very first one that I reached out to him and said like, hey, what do you think? Got to give me some tips because, he's pretty much behind everything I've been doing, like writing those books, writing those pieces out there. Jason is there and he's the to-go person for me. So I reach out to him for everything, and I truly appreciate everything you do. And, well, Jason, you've been doing an incredible job, and we're so fortunate to have you on this past podcast. And we're looking forward to bring you back on a different topics, and because Jason is the ocean of knowledge. He knows
Oh
so
my
much.
God, he's like the sensei. He's like the Yoda.
Like that's
He's
why
the
he's some of the
Afghan Yoda.
truth about Jason. It's not like he's been helping me, or if I don't say it, he won't help me, or he bribed me before the podcast. No, none of those things. But he does know a lot about a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Well, Jason, we'll give you the last word. Maybe say it one more time where this thing is going to be and like the location for our listeners.
Yeah, definitely. As the great poet Post Malone once sang, I had some help. I've got great teams that help me
Yeah.
on every project I work on, and they've been carrying my load for me. If you read my LinkedIn post, I've had some physical changes with my health, and they have carried the load for the last year, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. If you're in Nashville or in the Nashville area, you want to go to Nashville, you've never been, 21st of February, the end of this week, we're going to be there 6:30 until closing at John Bon Jovi's. And if you go to the website for our song, the song is Hold On, Reach Out. So it's HoRoSong at WordPress.com. Go there. You can grab your free tickets to the concert, get on the guest list, and ensure you come through the cool side entrance and get to come up where the party is. So we're pumped up and excited to do this.
I don't want to. I gotta make sure that because I do have this incredible book and I read it myself. It's an incredible book. If people want to know what's happening in Afghanistan or in the Middle East as a whole, they should read this book. And it gives you the option to choose your own path about everything. He talks about President Trump, and now he's back in the White House. So please grab this book, and we'll try to share the link too.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to it and proud of what you're doing. We all have to heal loudly, as Rob Dufresne once told me.
Yes,
We
exactly.
heal loudly, other people will hear it, and we can help.
Well, hey, on behalf of GCV Media, we're excited to bring you Voices of the Resistance. Do me a favor, give us some love. If you want to subscribe to GCV, that would be great. Give us, send it to your friends, send it to your enemies. I don't really care. Just send it to somebody so we can help give a platform for those who are resisting radical Islamic terrorism in any forms. On behalf of GCB, thank you, Jason, for coming. John, Safi, you're a pro. Until next time, GCB 6 out.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. Hey, bro.